Israel does the work for civilization against Iran. Sad story of domestic terrorism. There are plenty of dupes in order to have protests. This is Dr. David E. Schein for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. To say the last week has been explosive, it might be a dramatic understatement. Israel does the work for civilization against Iran, and now with a little help from its big friend, the USA. A little over 2 months ago, Trump gave Iran 60 days to reach a deal to trade prosperity and acceptance for its nuclear program. After a handful of meetings, it was obvious that Iran was delaying until they had finalized their nuclear weapons. On the 61st day, Israel acted on behalf of the rest of the world and did a strategic bombing that took out most of Iran's military leaders, as well as an amazing list of key military sites. This was possible since months ago, Israel engaged in a targeted bombing that did devastating damage to Iran's air defense systems. I note the parallel to World War II. About 2 years into the USA's involvement in Europe, Germany's air defenses had largely been destroyed. From there, it was a cleanup operation that still took another 18 months. This was due to the failure of the US and England to stop Hitler in the late 1930s, so the Nazis were very entrenched. It took a lot of armaments and innumerable human lives to end their occupation of Europe. But ending their air defenses parallel to Israel's approach to Iran was a big first step. Iran's population, some estimate over 80%, oppose their terrorist government that increasingly oppresses its own people. I believe this was key to the incredible attack on night one that took out so many military leaders and nuclear scientists. This does not happen without many eyes on the ground. In turn, Israel has done all it can to avoid civilian casualties. Israel calls its campaign against Iran Rising Lion, drawing a verse from the book of Numbers in the Bible that foretells the success of the Jewish people. In contrast, the terrorists have launched wave after wave of missiles at Israel's population centers. In addition to property damage, sadly, there has been loss of lives. These cowards, like all terrorists, don't go after military sites. They go after civilians and hospitals. This is parallel to the terrorist Putin going after the civilians in Ukraine. And I wonder how many lives will be lost before the Russians rise up against that murderer. My favorite video so far of the Iran-Israel conflict was the live broadcast by Iran State TV when a bomb hits the broadcast building and you can see the on-screen person running away. Word is that the terrorist Ayatollah may be seeking political asylum in Russia. Hey, that seems somehow appropriate, doesn't it? As Netanyahu explained, I want to assure the civilized world we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapon. Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make a nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. And he continued, the increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Here's my global observation on the situation. This documents the massive failure that is called the United Nations. If the UN was going to do its job, Iran would not have fallen to a terrorist regime and Russia would not have occupied Crimea in Ukraine. Why is a single country, along with US support, Israel, doing the work of so many civilized countries? This now includes a number of Iran's neighboring countries helping Israel intercept the missile barrage from Iran. While never a Trumpster, I do like the fact that he said he would decide in the next 2 weeks if the USA was going to get involved. That is because Israel needed the heavy bombing required to take out Iran's deep nuclear development sites. Well, in a surprise move, that happened Saturday night. The USA did what only it could do and sent the big bombers over with the bunker busters. Reports are not a single person on the US side was hurt, and all 3 critical targets were destroyed. Now, some of the morons called Dems have complained that there was no formal declaration of war by Congress. Well, tough. In order to safeguard our military members, it had to be a surprise. With the anti-American losers who are sympathetic to the wrong side here, no way the operation could have been leaked to this Congress. I have a little message for the Ayatollah and his shrinking band of supporters. In John Donne's famed poem, the final line is, "Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." Last I heard, Iran requested new peace talks, but I do not think anyone takes them seriously. The question is whether regime change is on the table. I certainly hope so. Over the years, I've had a good fortune to interact with many Iranians. I found them to be rational and articulate people. I believe the statistic is that as many as 80% favor returning to a more normal country and not a terrorist outpost. So I say to the people of Iran, Americans, us, support you. The best way to peace and prosperity is for you and your country is to Mussolini the Ayatollahs and take control of your country. If you're too young to know what that means, look up the last days of the Italian dictator from World War II. Obviously, the military is without many key leaders due to the precision bombings. I expect that many in the military, especially the lower ranks, and also support the people of Iran. If they are young and smart, they do not want to be killed along with the supporters of terrorism. Therefore, it is that time in your history to regain control of your country, and hopefully many in the so-called Revolutionary Guard will join you and stop oppressing you. Sad story of domestic terrorism. By now, everyone has heard of the tragic story from Minnesota of 2 assassinated and 2 shot by a crazed appointee of Governor Walz. I believe the man's wife has been taken in for questioning as well. The shooter disguised himself as a police officer and made his car look like one. In the car, he had many powerful weapons, which fortunately, since he got separated from the car, he was not able to use. The local police realized the situation, and the shooter somehow escaped, but was apprehended a couple days later. Leaving the car behind, a manifesto was discovered and a list of targets in addition to the cache of weapons. This was a politically motivated campaign. Most of the slopstream media have been quiet about it, but this was someone who was a Democrat and appears to have attacked other Democrats for not being as far left as he was. The good news is that the feds have him in custody, which means the death penalty is on the table. In the meantime, 2 other Democrat politicians have decided to get attention and violate the rules of a civilized society. An unknown California senator, Alex Padilla, charged into a Kristi Noem press conference without a suit or his congressional pin and ran toward her. Fortunately, guards intercepted him and cuffed him. I would like to see him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. How does this differ from J6, folks? Then a remote candidate for New York City Mayor Brad Lander decided to physically interfere in the arrest of an illegal at the courthouse after the person was in the custody of ICE. He was also cuffed and arrested. I call for prison time to make the point that it is that era when it's time to respect the law. How can we get civilians to behave when the elected officials are part of the problem? The sad thing is that the whole society has moved into this wave of violence. In Houston, incidents called road rage have erupted. This is so bad that the police are running focus operations to intercept some of the bad actors and calm it down. When I moved to Houston many years ago, there were road signs all around that said drive friendly. Hey, time to bring some of those signs back. There are plenty of dupes in order to protest. So the CCP and other commie scum and many fools duped by them decided to have a big protest on a Saturday. It was supposedly a protest against the Trump administration and to oppose ICE enforcement. Remember, the vast percentage of Americans support legal immigration and oppose wide open borders. Best I can tell, the whole deal was a bust. All it did was mess up traffic in some cities and waste millions of tax dollars for police security. Some might reply, if you care about tax dollars, why did Trump have a big army parade? Hey, I didn't support the parade, but at least it was pro-American. I would have scheduled it for the 4th of July or Memorial Day instead. While there were reports of a good number of protesters at these rallies, the reality is that they represented a tiny percentage of the population. I have work to do. Why would I run around and protest in favor of illegal immigration? And of course, Trump is no king. If he was, he would not have left the White House following the questionable 2020 election. Again, at least in California, there were reports that the violence was coordinated by paid protesters funded by anti-American organizations. Worthless Governor Gavin No Sense is complaining that the deployment of National Guard military to stop the violence in LA is an assault on democracy. If he did his job, none of this would have happened. More than one commentator has mentioned the use of federal troops to enforce admission of black students to schools and universities during the 1950s and 1960s. There is precedent, in other words. I strongly suspect that the firebombing incident in Boulder, Colorado, and the murder of the Jewish couple in Washington, D.C. were coordinated by the same operations trying to disrupt American society. I would like to see what investigation of such sources produces. Time for a reckoning. I suspect that there is a lot more going on behind the scenes, basically an attempt to bring down the American society. It's a very sad situation, folks. I don't think it'll be successful, but I am concerned. Trump seems to have had an impact on the G7 since the focus was definitely real business issues and not this climate change hoax and gender issues from the recent past. The G7 threw out Russia a few years ago, as was previously the G8. It is presently comprised of the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. Reportedly, Trump volunteered that Russia should not have been thrown out. I disagree. I'm glad that this deranged murderer is not being included. This year's meeting was hosted by Mark Carney, the new PM of Canada. He and Trump seem to get along okay. The reported focus was on energy security, artificial intelligence, critical mineral supply chains, and global economic stability. Trump left early to return to D.C. due to the Israel-Iran conflict. The accused criminal reported gang member Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, the illegal alien deported to his native El Salvador earlier this year, has been brought back to the United States as a result of court rulings. So the taxpayers wasted more money on this garbage who should have stayed in his home country. This is the illegal who clowns like Senator Chris Van Hollen went to visit with your taxpayer money. Don't forget that next time he runs for re-election. On the good news side, Abrego Garcia is not out running around. The Justice Department met him with an indictment for human trafficking, which includes 2 felony counts. They have video evidence. I hope he will do a long stint in a high-security prison and then be deported back to El Salvador. He should never be free again to roam the streets of this country and commit crimes. What is reported to be the world's richest shipwreck was located off the coast of Colombia. I credit iHeartRadio's newsletter for this tidbit. The San Jose, a Spanish galleon, sank in 1708 during a battle with British forces. It was carrying a treasure valued at up to $20 billion in today's dollars. The ship had gold, silver, emeralds, and other valuables from Peru. The booty was being brought back to fund the War of Spanish Succession. I had to look that up, folks. The quick story was there was a war for control of Spain from 1700 to 1714 because the Spanish king died without an heir. It ended with a possible French king accepting the throne of Spain and agreeing not to also be the king of France. In any event, the Colombian Navy, in collaboration with marine archaeologists, actually located the wreck in 2015 using underwater drones. It is at a depth of 600 meters, so the site is too deep for divers. An interesting aspect is that they identified the ship because there were gold coins from 1707 found scattered on the ocean floor. These coins bore Spanish imperial symbols, confirming the ship's identity. Of course, there's a legal battle over ownership. Colombia claims the wreck under its national heritage laws as it lies within its territorial waters. However, Spain argues that San Jose is a Spanish state property. Additionally, Sea Search Armada, an American salvage company, claims it first located the wreck in the 1980s and seeks compensation. And indigenous groups from both Peru and Bolivia also assert rights to the treasure, arguing it was originally taken from them during Spanish colonial rule. The Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague will ultimately decide the rightful owner of the shipwreck. The President of Colombia has ordered preservation of the site. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.